Good afternoon, everybody. Please be seated. Routine proceedings, introduction of bills, committee reports. The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the 8th report of the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development.
Table.
Your Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development.
Dispense. Tabling of reports. Oh, my apologies. The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Seine River, that the report of the committee be received.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for La Vérendrye, seconded by the Honourable Member for Seine River, that the Honourable Report be received. That the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed, and so ordered. Tabling of reports. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm tabling a change in the sequence for the consideration of departmental estimates in the committee of supply for today, October 13th.
The Honourable Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is my pleasure to table the following reports. Entrepreneurship Manitoba 2021-2022 Annual Report. Materials Distribution Agency Annual Report for 2021-2022. And the 2021-2022 Vehicle and Equipment Management Agency Annual Report.
Wow.
And I'm pleased to table the following report, the Auditor General's Report, Audit of Information Systems Privileged Access, dated October 2022, in accordance with the provisions of Section 28, subsection 1 of the Auditor General Act. Ministerial statements, and I would indicate that the required 90 minutes time was given. The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Saturday, October 15th is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day. Many families and individuals mark this day by lighting a candle in the memory of their beautiful little ones whose lives ended far too soon. The Walk to Remember was held earlier this month in St. Vital Park in Winnipeg, and provided grieving families an opportunity to support each other on a path that nobody chooses to walk, but many find themselves on. Mr. Deputy Speaker, an estimated 10 to 15% of pregnancies end in miscarriage in the first trimester, up to 5% in the second trimester. This represents many broken hearts living and walking among us. There are hundreds more families that live with the soul-crushing pain of the death of their infants. Often, there are no explanations or answers for the passing, which only adds to the grief. My husband and I have experienced the loss of 3 pregnancies. Each one represented the hopes and the dreams of an expanded family, and each were loved the moment we had confirmation of their existence. Mr. Deputy Speaker, our government recognizes the heavy grief that is carried by Manitobans who have experienced pregnancy and infant loss, and we are grateful for the programs offered through the Women's Health Clinic. Counseling for individuals and groups as they navigate this heartbreak is key to healing. To all of the parents in Manitoba who are hurting today, I see you, I acknowledge your sadness, and I grieve beside you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for the Pau-Kamisak.
Kinanaskamatin, Deputy Speaker. Losing a child at any age of pregnancy or infancy is devastating. National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day, which is observed on October 15th, honors the lives lost to miscarriages, as well as sudden infant syndrome, stillbirths, and newborn deaths. It is a day to counter the negative stereotypes surrounding infant loss through constructive conversation and action. Parents who experience infant loss should have enough time and opportunity to grieve their infants. They should not be silenced or denied time off from their regular day-to-day activities. Currently, parents who experience miscarriages or stillbirths still have to cut into their sick leave, lose part of their paycheck, or risk their jobs to take time off to heal. This is an impossible choice for many and could lead to long-term trauma if parents are not allowed time to grieve. In some cases, mothers who have had a miscarriage in their first trimester might have difficulty asking for time off if they had not disclosed their pregnancy to their employer. Fathers, on the other hand, have to bottle up their grief. Such situations compound the problem and make life more difficult for grieving parents. To this end, I urge the PC government to support Bill 219, which makes it possible for parents to take up to 3 days paid leave following a miscarriage or stillbirth. Grieving parents should not have to choose between mourning their children and putting food on the table. Eggleston, Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for River Heights.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for leave to speak to the minister's statement.
Does the member have leave? The honourable member for River Heights.
Mr. Speaker, the loss of a partly grown fetus during pregnancy or an infant during the first few months of life can be very traumatic. It is important to recognize how traumatic this can be. I will share the experience that Naomi and I had with the loss occurring after about 6 to 8 weeks of the pregnancy. It was exhausting physically and psychologically. As Naomi expressed it to me, the body needs time to heal after a miscarriage and for the hormonal cycles to get back to normal. Naomi continues even today to mention, a few years later, that for her, her body was growing a fetus, and the loss of that fetus caused hormonal changes resulting in feelings of deep emotional loss. A cousin of mine and his wife lost a child to sudden infant death syndrome. It too was deeply impactful, and I think may have been a trigger which led to the breakup of their marriage. There is no easy way to deal with these impacts. They are often underestimated, misunderstood, or overlooked. It is important that there's wider appreciation of what happens with pregnancy and infancy loss, so that all can be supportive of families who are going through this process and trying to deal with the pregnancy or infancy loss. Thank you. Merci, Miigwech.
Members' statements. The honourable member. Is this a ministerial statement? Okay. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
I rise today to recognize Bruce Benson, Gimli commercial fisherman, journalist, author, and creator of the Flag of Humanity. In 2008, Bruce was hiking the Appalachian Trail with his 13-year-old son. As they walked, he began to ponder what kind of world would his son inherit. He concluded, the world is messed up in many ways, but almost always based on the differences between us humans. He began his work on creating the Flag of Humanity, celebrating the commonality of being human. The mantra of the Flag of Humanity is, no matter a person's religion or the lack thereof, no matter a person's skin color, nationality, or politics, these differences are as nothing compared to what we have in common. We are human. Flags are powerful things. Every nation on earth has one. And over the course of human history, flags or banners have played an important part in every political or social change. Bruce has traveled with the flag to many countries at events too numerous to mention here today. Crossing the Edmund-Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, a parade in mainland China, and most recently, the Old City of Jerusalem. Gimli flies the flag of humanity on a flagpole at the beach year-round, and for 5 years, it's been flown periodically on the province's flagpole at Memorial Boulevard. It's flying here once again today. Join me in recognizing and applauding Bruce Benson's quest to unite humanity and focus on our commonalities as humans and not our differences, so that we may pass on a better world to our children.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
I know I can't hold up my flag of humanity. It would be considered a prop, but that's what's on all the desks here today. So I just like to thank the member for donating these, so we all have a copy of it.
Further members' statements. Who's next? All right. The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, today I would like to recognize the work and important gains that community members are making in the lives of young Manitobans. The Gang Action Interagency Network, or GAIN Manitoba, is a network of agencies working on grassroots solutions to prevent and reduce gang involvement in Winnipeg. Despite its very limited resources, GAIN has a monumental task. Its mission is to raise awareness, collaborate, and funnel those community resources to address the needs of clients, usually young people living in poverty in Winnipeg with very little family or social support in the orbit of gangs. GAIN helps communities with strategies for gang prevention, intervention, or exit options for clients. GAIN has one-on-one relationships with these young Manitobans and connects them with supports whenever possible. GAIN is now running a program along with Della Steinke, a local tattoo artist, to remove gang-affiliated tattoos from former gang members trying to start new chapters in their lives. Since 2016, Ms. Steinke has personally been donating her time, skills, and materials to do the long and painstaking work of gang-affiliated tattoo removal for clients. Removing these prominent gang-affiliated symbols on visible areas like face, hands, and neck have helped many clients find and keep employment and stay on new life paths. Another project which GAIN offers is the New Paths Mentorship Program. This seeks to improve the justice system's ability to reintegrate young offenders with the discovery of their identity through mentorship. One of the program's main objectives is to support participants as they create their own safe, positive, and healthy path towards employment and sobriety. GAIN, along with its multiple partner organizations, aims to improve the justice system's ability to reintegrate young offenders. As GAIN is a community-run and funded organization, I encourage all who are capable to assist in donating to this amazing program that has helped so many. And I would like to welcome Ryan Beardy, GAIN coordinator, who is able to join us today, and sincerely thank him and all others involved for their tireless efforts to help heal and offer hope to those who are working to forge a better life. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is my pleasure to rise today to deliver a private member statement to congratulate all of the organizations that hosted amazing community events in the Lac Tabani constituency over the summer. I would like to also applaud and give a big thank you to all the wonderful volunteers who play an essential role in making these events happen. Now that we are transitioning into fall or winter months, there are still many great events to look forward to, some of which include the annual Lac Tabani Ice Fishing Derby and the Canadian Power Toboggan Championships in Beausejour and Brokenhead. Plus, there are plenty of community fall suppers, curling bonspiels, hockey tournaments, craft shows, poker derbies, and fundraisers throughout the constituency on any given weekend. If you can, please support our communities by supporting their events, and please take the time to thank a volunteer. We are fortunate during all seasons in the Lac du Bonny constituency. We have 9 golf courses, some rated the best in Canada. Amazing trails like the Pinawa Trail, the Red River North Trail, the Blue Water South Trail, and of course the Ontario Trail. Whether you enjoy hiking, cross-country skiing, or snowshoeing, there's a number of picturesque trails for you to choose from. There are also groomed snowmobile trails all throughout the constituency and within our great parks, which are very well maintained by local snowmobile clubs and their volunteers. There is no shortage of family-friendly activities to enjoy in the Lac du Bonny constituency. I encourage all of you to visit and immerse yourself in nature's splendor that is eastern Manitoba. I also would like to take this time to congratulate all the recipients of our government's Sustainable Building Communities program. Our government was able to double its funding from $12 million to $25 million. Close to $1.2 million were received within the communities of the Lac du Bonny constituency. Again, I encourage all to come to the Lac du Bonny constituency for a visit or a stay. We have something for everyone.
Members' time has expired. The honourable member for St. James.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's my great honor today to acknowledge the incredible work that the South Valor Residents Association is doing in my community. It was founded in 2020 with a mission to foster community well-being in South Valor by connecting residents and building an inclusive and supportive community in which everyone belongs. The South Valor Residents Association is focused on community safety and connection, and they take a proactive approach that emphasizes community activities to create a sense of belonging, cultivate shared green space, and help people to get to know their neighbors. The goal is to empower residents to see safety as a shared resource among community members. One of the first projects they took on was a survey of residents to see what concerns they could help address. In addition to having a safe and connected community, what they heard was that residents wanted shared green spaces. As a result, the South Valor Residents Association has hosted neighborhood cleanups and is involved in the work to protect and manage trees in the community. They've also partnered with the U of W to study grassroots, anti-oppressive approaches to community safety. One exciting new initiative for the South Valor Residents Association is the Community Public Art Project. Members of the community are working with an artist to co-design an art piece. Studies have shown that art projects like this help promote community safety and foster connection. They also had a great response to their first street party back in August, and I'm excited that this will be an annual event in our community. The South Valor Residents Association is committed to being an inclusive and open to anyone who would like to get involved. I'd like to invite all members of the Chamber to join me in thanking SVRA board members Stacey Cardigan-Smith, Rachel Andruschuk, Elizabeth Jakomek, Teresa Prokopenko, Hillary Gare, Kyle Wiebe, and Jason Chartrand for the important work they are doing in support of my community.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's still Thanksgiving week, so I would just like to share a few words of gratitude. You know, this is a season of change and loss and celebration, and I'd like to mention a couple of people we've lost lately. One is that I'm grateful for the life of Ron Mazer. Ron was a wonderful, tender, thoughtful person, community activist who fought for green spaces. At one point, he worked, I don't know how exactly he ended up being involved in returning the bell of Batoche, which had been liberated from a museum. He worked with the Union Nationale de Métis de Saint-Joseph to return the bell. But Ron is a really wonderful person, and we just want to send our love to his wife, Joyce, who's mourning his loss. My Aunt Jean, who was 93, died recently. She was my father's last remaining sibling, so it's a real break with the past for me. She used to ride a horse to a one-room schoolhouse in a town that doesn't exist anymore in Manitoba. But she was a wonderful historian and made a real contribution to education, both in Manitoba and in Quebec. And there are celebrations as well. And October for me, I mean, there's Thanksgiving, there's Halloween. 3 of my children have birthdays, which means that this is a big, big month for sugar consumption. But they're terribly excited about it. But I also want to recognize somebody who's celebrated both historic wedding anniversary and it's his birthday today, the member for River Heights. Now, you should know, I'm not going to reveal his actual age, but it might surprise you all to know that the member for Tyndall Park, being leader of the Manitoba Liberal Party really ages you. The member for Tyndall Park is actually the oldest person in our caucus, but it's simply that the wear and tear of age takes its toll on us. So I just want to thank you, John, for your service and wish him a very happy birthday. Thank you.
I'm not sure how to respond to that. I'm just going to leave it. I would like to draw the attention of all honorable members to the Speaker's Gallery, where we have with us today Joshua Braun, who is my guest, a grade 11 student from my constituency of Rossmere. On behalf of all honorable members, we welcome you here today, Josh. Enjoy your time here. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Patients and frontline workers at the Grace Hospital are speaking out. In fact, they're sending out an SOS. This is after PC cuts have led to 13 nurses leaving the ICU at the Grace Hospital. That's just since this summer. This comes, of course, after this government cut 9 beds at the Grace Hospital. And now we see the wait times growing month after month and year after year. It's time for this government to stop cutting health care at the Grace Hospital. Will the Premier stop cutting the Grace and start to invest in frontline health care?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank all the healthcare professionals on the front line at the Grace Hospital for their commitment and their passion to serving Manitobans during this difficult time, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Nurse staffing challenges is an issue that many jurisdictions across Canada are facing, and it's actually being felt globally, and it's not unique to Manitoba. But our government is taking action, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That's why we're adding more nurse training seats, on track to reach 400 new nurse education seats, investing in seats in the north, welcoming new graduates to the health system, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and we will continue to do what needs to be done to address the staffing shortage.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
What's unique to Manitoba is that we have a PC government that continues to cut health care. That's why we lost 13 ICU nurses from the Grace just since this past summer. That's why we lost 9 beds at the Grace. We saw them cut the Mature Women's Centre at Victoria General. We've seen them close quick care clinics and public access clinics across the city. They've even cut cancer care access points from our provincial healthcare system. The list of cuts goes on and on and on, and it seems like each and every day this government adds more cuts to the list. When will they finally listen to the people of Manitoba and stop cutting health care?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We are listening, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and that is why I was so pleased to have the opportunity to meet in person with the ED nurses at Health Sciences Centre, talking with nurses in the north, in Prairie Mountain, in Interlake Eastern Regional Health Authority, and those discussions will continue, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Order.
But what is unique to Manitoba and what is unique to this government that the NDP never did is that we have a $6 an hour premium to staff for all hours worked in an ICU. It also applies to staff in personal care homes, a one-time ICU recruitment and retention initiative grant,
Order.
Annual lump sum payment up to $2,000.
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, this past summer, 13 intensive care units left the bedside at the Grace Hospital, and this government's only response has been to cut 9 more beds from the Grace Hospital. People in Kirkfield Park are upset. They look at that data, which is contained in the Health Authority's annual report, an annual report that each year documents new and damaging cuts to our healthcare system instituted by this Premier. Folks in West Winnipeg and across the province are wondering when this government's going to cut healthcare. What does the Premier have to say to them?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition continues to put inaccurate information on the record, but I'm pleased to correct the record. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am aware, and I'm not surprised that the Leader of the Opposition hasn't tabled that page from the annual report, because what he would see on that page is that those beds were temporary, Mr. Deputy Speaker, but he doesn't want Manitobans to know that. But what I do want Manitobans to know is that the NDP seem to have forgotten their own record. It's not surprising. I would want to forget it as well. The last 2 years the former NDP government was in power, Grace Hospital has had the worst wait times for care in all of Canada.
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition with a follow-up question.
Healthcare in Manitoba today under the PCs is worse than it's ever been in history. Lake Winnipeg is also at some of the highest levels since the 1970s. Now, we know that this means that there's a real threat of flooding for communities along the lake, and that's why it's so important to invest in flood protections right now. Yet we've seen this government underspend their infrastructure budget by millions. Last year, the government underspent the budget for flood protection by $11 million. That's about 30%. Which steps are the Premier taking to protect communities along Lake Winnipeg from flooding?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition should realize that in our department we are doing everything possible to make sure that our water levels on every lake in Manitoba are monitored, and we're looking at resiliency projects to make sure that we actually invest in these projects, that we protect communities like Peguis, like Fisher River, and we'll continue working with First Nation communities to make sure that we have solutions, and they're at the table with those solutions, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
You know, it's important to invest in measures to protect against flooding. You know, we saw this earlier this year, overland flooding in communities like Siglowick in the region around Gimli. The PCs have failed numerous instances to get these sorts of flood protections built. We know that the Channels project in the Interlake is going nowhere under this government, in spite of the fact that ranchers in the Interlake and on the west side of Lake Manitoba are very concerned that flood conditions right now look like they did previous to other record flood years. Along Lake Winnipeg, there are also concerns. And we see in this year's estimates books that this government has underspent flood protection budgets by $11 million. They underspent by 30%. In a record year of
the member's time has expired.
Levels.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Well, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if the member, the opposite, the Leader of the Official Opposition wants to talk about underspent in infrastructure, let's look at their record, the NDP record, which the Honourable Member from Concordia was part of. They underspent in 2007 by $79 million. They underspent in 2008 by $98 million. In 2009, they underspent by $120 million. In 2010, they underspent by $132 million. In 2011, they underspent by $122. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member, I'm not going to take any comments from this member, because the fact is they could have got it done when they underspent by that much.
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, we need a calm and rational approach to dealing with the flooding issues around Lake Winnipeg throughout the Interlake. What we see defies logic and defies reason. In the infrastructure budget this year, this government has underspent by $11 million. That's 30% of the flood protection budget, and that is during a year of record high water levels. Now, around Lake Winnipeg, there are many concerns. Throughout the Interlake and on the west side of Lake Manitoba, people are concerned that the flood conditions right now look a lot like they did prior to the flood of 2011. The government is not taking action, and they're not taking the issue seriously enough. When will they stop underspending? When will they stop the cuts? And when will they start protecting from floods?
Member's time has expired. The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, this gives me the opportunity to actually thank my staff. You know, this has been the historical record, second worst flooding in Manitoba history. Mr. Deputy Speaker,
Order.
we actually, there's about over $200 million of damage that was done by this flood, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And when it comes to the parks staff, to my staff, the EMO staff, they worked around the clock, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and they did a very good job. And then my staff, who are also with the NPI, who are now fixing a lot of the infrastructure, they're doing a great job, and I want to thank them, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, we've proven this week that the minister personally overruled the significant safety concerns that his department identified just to award a permit to a party donor. Yesterday, the minister admitted in estimates that he and another MLA met in private with the developer, VBJ Developments. The minister then refused to answer any further questions or provide details on the matter, so I'd like to give him the opportunity in question period here today. Why did he keep those meetings secret, and why won't he tell us who met with VBJ and on what date?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, while the member for Concordia continues to take an aimless walk in the woods of innuendo and conjecture and allegation, let us welcome him back to the path. He's talking about a project that was prioritized by the City of Brandon, by the Brandon Mayor, by the Brandon Council, who believe in this project to bring economic development, to bring housing, to bring retail development to Brandon, who actually passed a motion in Council to support it. So let me be clear for the member that while the rules were followed, he better pick up the phone and call the City of Brandon to figure out whether or not he even knows what the level of priority is that Brandon has attached to this important project.
Order. The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Let's be clear, Mr. Deputy Speaker, VBJ Developments are not a registered lobbyist in Manitoba, but their owner is a major donor to the PC party and to the Premier of Manitoba. They gave the maximum allowed, in fact, to the Premier's leadership run. The Minister has admitted that he was willing to overrule his own department's safety concerns after he privately met with that developer. Why did the minister keep these meetings secret? And who else in their cabinet met with VBJ and when? What is the minister trying to hide?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
That member is making ridiculous assertions that somehow every single piece of advice provided by civil service is automatically adopted by governments. That's not reasonable. That's not the way the rules work. Civil servants, executive managers of departments, develop ideas, they develop initiatives, they present them to the minister for contemplation, for adjudication, and ministers and governments make decisions on the basis of that advice. In all cases, in this particular instance, safety is being followed. With respect to this project, safety is number one. If at any point in the future safety is not observed, the project will not go ahead. Those conditions have been written in. Let them continue to make their baseless allegations. We know the NDP's
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Concordia on a final supplementary.
I can understand why the Minister of Finance doesn't want the Minister of Infrastructure to answer, because he still doesn't deny that he personally overruled a serious safety and environmental concern after he met with a major donor to the PC party and to the Premier. The Minister says that he met with an MLA and with VBJ to be lobbied about this permit, which the Minister ultimately provided to that developer. So I ask again, why won't the Minister answer for himself and tell us why were these meetings kept secret and who else in Cabinet met with VBJ? What is he trying to hide from the people of Brandon and the people of Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
It's quite something coming from the member for Concordia, who sat at the table when the NDP were in power, when Christine Melnick personally sent directions to her civil servants to tell them to show up at the legislature and be part of a political stunt. Quite something coming from the member of Concordia, who was there at the table when Steve Ashton gave personal contracts on tiger dams. This government will take no lessons on transparency when it comes from the NDP. We are standing with the City of Brandon, who has prioritized a project for economic development, and we stand with that city and its plans to expand these services to the city and its residents.
The Honourable Member for St. John's.
This government has privatized much of Manitoba's aviation services, including wildfire suppression, air ambulance, and air transport services. In fact, they've privatized so much of Manitoba's air services, they're now hiring a private consultant to review all of the privatization that they've done.
Wow.
On October 3rd, the PC government put out a request for proposals to provide aviation consulting services for contract management services to Manitoba, which I will table. Can the minister tell us how much this RFP will cost Manitobans?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I'm happy to provide a bit of a history lesson and some context to the members of the opposition. When our government formed government and undertook to review the arrangements for aviation and healthcare in the North, we realized that it was a broad array of arrangements that did not seek to get best value, did not set minimum safety standards, and our government took exception to that. On the basis of expert advice, we intervened. We created a system that created better reliability, better service, better continuity, and higher safety standards. This member should know, when she asked that question, that she's taking exception to that higher level of standard that we've insisted on for people in the North.
The Honourable Member for St. John's on a follow-up question.
Clearly, the minister doesn't talk to anybody in the North, because we know that Manitobans have seen the impacts of PC privatization of air services. We've heard horror stories of people having to wait dozens and dozens of hours for air ambulance just to get the care that they need and they deserve. It's clear the government is aware of the issues that their privatization has caused, as they now have put out an RFP for aviation consulting services to evaluate all of their privatization. Will the PCs reverse their privatization and keep Manitoba Air Services public? Will they commit to it today?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Manitobans know that the NDP are interested in ideology. Manitobans know that we as a government are interested in service, in safety, and in being able to provide better services to Manitobans. We're talking about a 24-hour-a-day service, 365-day service of primary aircraft that have become more available. They are supported by additional backup aircraft that never existed under the previous government. The previous government took no steps to modernize. They watched their fleet deteriorate to the point where pilots couldn't fly, and the aircraft were constantly grounded. No wonder they want to yell down the answer. We stand on the side of safety. They stand on the side of ideology.
The Honourable Member for St. John's on a final supplementary.
Air services have declined ever since the PC sold them
right.
off to the highest bidder.
Yep.
Manitobans are having to wait longer for air ambulance services. And just last week, a mother and her little newborn had to wait over 24 hours for a medevac after her child experienced seizures. Rather than address the issues with Manitoba's privatization air services, the PCs are instead giving even more money to private consultants. This makes absolutely no sense. Will the minister commit to reversing his government's privatization of air services and keep them public?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
This government inherited an aviation service for the North that was in disarray, that had been mismanaged by the NDP.
Yeah.
This RFP provides for the following: safe care, standards, and universal standards for all the operators. A modern critical care service. We now have airplanes that address the needs of Manitoba, including neonatal incubators and bariatric stretcher platforms. These were never in place. People sat near the runway waiting for planes that did not come. Now we have service standards, we have accountabilities, and we have better value for Manitobans, and we stand on the side of that, not on the side of ridiculous allegations that the NDP are raising.
The Honourable Member for Fort Garry.
In 2020, on behalf of the Manitoba government, Paul Beauregard awarded a contract extension to Bell MTS for government network services worth $37.5 million. This contract was awarded without competition, and despite the fact that Paul Beauregard was a former MTS executive. Now, through FIPA, we've learned that this contract will expire on December 31st of this year. But Bell MTS will have the opportunity for another extension, and I'll table the document. Can the minister tell us whether Bell MTS will award yet another extension?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
I want to caution the member for reprehensible behavior that he's exhibiting in this legislature. It really goes beyond the pale to be identifying the names of senior civil servants who worked for this government. I ask that the member apologize to this legislature for calling out the names of senior civil servants who gave their time and their expertise to help lead this province. No wonder his colleague who tried the same stunt was investigated and convicted for breaking our respectful workplace laws.
The Honourable Member for Fort Garry on a follow-up question.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, in 2020, Brian Pallister and Paul Beauregard interfered on a data network contract with the province. Instead, Bell MTS was given a contract extension significantly richer than the original deal. At the end of 2020, the extension will be over. But Bell MTS had the opportunity for yet another extension. So FIPA documents, which I will table, show the tender deadline was September 14, 2022. The question is simple. Was Bell MTS awarded another contract extension?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, that's more than obtuse. That's just belligerent. When given the opportunity to apologize and desist, he doubles down. No wonder an investigator that was independent found that the NDP MLA over there breached the legislature's own respectful workplace policy when he made comments previously about a senior civil servant. At that time, the member for St. James was investigated for bullying, harassing, offending, and embarrassing a senior civil servant. Will that member take this opportunity to think twice, reflect, dig deep, and apologize to this legislature and to that individual?
The Honourable Member for Fort Garry on a final supplementary.
The situation is very, very simple, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Given the previous interference by Paul Beauregard and Brian Pallister, we are asking for transparency from this government. Manitobans deserve to know whether the PC government is extending contracts without any competition. The minister should explain whether Bell MTS received another contract extension and if this extension was granted without competition. Will he do so today?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, you always hope that people will learn something from history. You at least hope that they will learn something from an independent investigation into their own misconduct. But it's clear today that the member for Fort Garry has learned nothing from the previous investigation into the conduct that was reprehensible by the member for St. James, who was actually cited for contempt and his attempts to go after senior civil servants. I wonder, who is the next senior civil servant who should live in fear that this minister is going to start naming in the legislature members? Is it from infrastructure, health? Is it from economic development? Who does he want to cite for in this way in the legislature?
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Shortly after being sworn in, the Premier said that she would develop a Manitoba carbon pricing plan before December 31st of this year. So it's simple. I'm asking the Minister again, can he confirm that this government will in fact meet the commitment that they have made, and will they be bringing forward a carbon pricing plan by December 31st of this year?
The Honourable Minister for Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And as the member knows, we continue to have dialogue with the federal government when it comes to carbon pricing. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we know that the Premier has had several discussions with the Prime Minister and his office as well regarding carbon pricing. As a matter of fact, we've also, and I know the Premier's asked, about affordability as well. Just recently, I'm sure the member's aware of as well. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we'll continue to have dialogue with the federal government as we move forward on this very important affordability issue.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, dialogue is a very fancy word for wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars on needless legal battles, and then finally abandoning that challenge publicly to bringing forward her own plan by December 31st of this year. It's so straightforward. Does the minister intend to bring forward that plan as promised, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister for Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And as I said in my first response, it's quite clear that we're continuing to have dialogue with the federal government, and we'll continue to have discussions in a collaborative manner to ensure that Manitobans going forward are also respected when it comes to affordability. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we know that Manitoba families are hurting right now. We know that the impact of the carbon tax is influencing how they operate in their daily lives. We'll protect Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for Wolseley on a final question.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, we know this minister has problems with deadlines, which is why this government put forward an amendment through BITSA to push off accountability at Efficiency Manitoba. But this question is really straightforward. The Premier has committed to bring forward their own carbon price plan by December 31st of this year. Is that still the case? Or have they abandoned this plan? Will the minister tell Manitobans today?
The Honourable Minister for Environment, Climate and Parks.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'll certainly look forward to answering a question on whether or not the NDP ever met deadlines. We know when it comes to the environment, Mr. Deputy Speaker. There was no plan, let alone a deadline, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have a plan to ensure that we move forward in a sustainable way for Manitobans. As a matter of fact, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if the proposed carbon tax is implemented in 2030, as it is now, at $170 per ton, the average Manitoba family will be paying $1,145 more than they get back. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we're on the side of Manitobans.
You're here.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're concerned this government isn't taking our call for an inquiry into the cover-up of sexual harassment and sexual assault in labour seriously. There is no right door for survivors to go through, because when they file a grievance against a powerful representative, investigations may be botched, the survivor is punished, fired, and forced to sign an NDA to silence them for life. Not just one time, but many times over. I table a report with the Canadian Labour Council investigation into former CUPE Manitoba President Terry Egan, who's faced multiple complaints, along with an article with multiple sources that say the report was a whitewash and the CLC lied. People who've signed NDAs can only speak freely if a court lets them, like at an inquiry. Is the government permanently closing the door on one?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And as I stated yesterday, that our government takes the issue of workplace safety very, very seriously. That is why we introduced policy change, a systemic change to the culture and the policy within the Manitoba Civil Service. That is why we have some of the strongest policies on place, why everybody needs to undergo harassment training, and that there is a path forward for survivors to go with allegations and to have their cases heard. And I would urge that member to understand what the process is and to endeavour to follow that process.
The honourable member for St. Boniface on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We're really concerned with the fact that in scandal after scandal in Manitoba, where everyone knows about something terrible going on, just how hard it is for people to get justice or even to speak up. At the police headquarters, we know there was bribery. That's no secret. The RCMP recommended charges, but in Manitoba, nothing happens and there's no inquiry. Peter Nygaard, police recommended charges. He's been charged in Ontario and Quebec, but in Manitoba, nothing happens, no inquiry. With countless Indigenous injustices, there's a grim silence of shared shame. Everyone knows, but no one knows why it can't be addressed, because no one will look into it. Will the Premier or the Minister of the Status of Women meet with me and the people who want this inquiry held to hear their stories?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
We could not agree more with the member when he cites the fact that it is very important to maintain a respectful workplace. This is exactly why I referenced the conduct of the member for St. James before and asked the member for Fort Garry to do better in his comments. But I want to caution the member when it comes to allegations about Crown services and how they determine the threshold for placing charges. I want to make absolutely clear to that member that he's talking about the basis of our judicial system, which is the independence of the courts and the independence of investigation. That duty is the sacred duty of Crown prosecutors and not that of the member for St. Boniface.
The honourable member for River Heights on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. In spite of the fact that many Manitobans are working hard to help those with disabilities, all too often individuals with learning disabilities are stigmatized, are bullied, and are not provided the accommodation to succeed in Manitoba. Thomas Poncilius, who's here in the gallery with us today, has a learning disability. He can attest to these ongoing issues from his personal experience. I asked the Premier, what actions is she taking to create awareness of this issue and to help end stigmatization and bullying of those with learning disabilities and to ensure that they receive reasonable accommodation when it is needed?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Our government, of course, finds it absolutely reprehensible whenever anybody bullies or mocks a person with disabilities. There is nothing more reprehensible than that. And I extend my sincere apologies to the member in the chamber today in the gallery if he has ever been on the receiving end of bullying because of a disability. Our government is raising awareness. We are working with the community, and we are working with advocates to ensure that everyone in the province of Manitoba is treated respectfully, that they have a path forward, whether it be a path to independence or a path towards employment, a place that they can live and work and experience and achieve their highest destiny.
The minister's time has expired. The honourable member for Dauphin.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I understand this morning the Ministers of Agriculture and also the Minister of Environment, Climate and Parks joined Fertilizer Canada and the Keystone Agriculture producers to sign a memorandum of understanding regarding nutrient stewardship. Manitoba has led the way in responsible fertilizer usage and was the first to sign an MOU with Fertilizer Canada. Can the minister explain the importance of this agreement and what it will mean for Manitoba producers and agriculture in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from Dauphin for the opportunity to speak on this matter. But first, I want to thank all the farmers who are leading the way with responsible and sustainable agriculture practices. Manitoba farmers are familiar with our approach, the right source at the right time and the right place at the right rate. With a little play on words, for sustainable agriculture, the right time is here, the right place is here, the right time is now, and the right source is our hardworking farmers. I hope I speak on behalf of all members in the chamber here today when I want to thank these farmers for their efforts and wish everyone a successful remainder of their harvest.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Manitoban farmers are concerned about access to Crown lands. Beef producers have told this government over and over that lease system is not working. When will the minister address these concerns with changes to the Crown land system?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, our government is a listening government, and if the NDP don't believe, maybe they would believe Brent Benson, president of the Manitoba Crown Land Leaseholders Association. In an article written by the Manitoba Cooperators about rent reduction of the Ag Crown lands, Brent Benson says, and I quote, "It appears that Minister Johnson is actually listening to producers, and we are hopeful that the consultation process will result in more positive change."
Order. Members can only refer to other members, including themselves, by their portfolio or constituency name. That is confirmed by the clerks. I would request that the adjustment be made by that member. The Honourable Member for Agriculture. You have a few seconds left.
I would like to table that article. Here. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, Brett Benson is right. We're listening. There is more positive change to come. Manitobans are encouraged to engage in our survey on Engage
The
MB.
Honourable Minister's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I request Minister of Agriculture to listen that I have met with many producers, including in Parkland and the Interlake. No one producer has told me that they can live with the changes this government has put in place. This PC government is prioritizing money over people. When will the minister listen and take action and address his government's changes to the Crown land system?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'm hoping that the member can look at the date of the papers that I just tabled. This is a very recent article, and I just want to quote that again. The article is written by the Manitoba Cooperators about rent reduction of Ag Crown lands. And Brent Benson says, and I almost quote, it appears that the Minister of Agriculture is actually listening to producers, and we are hopeful that the consultation process will result in more positive changes to come.
Hear, hear.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Burrows.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the PCs have gutted Manitoba agriculture. Hundreds of positions have been left vacant. Dozens of offices closed. Lending activity to producers declined by 11% last year. Altogether, it means less service and less support for farmers. When will the minister address the cuts his government has made to the Department of Agriculture?
Yep. The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I know the member has met with Manitoba Crown Land Leaseholders Association, so maybe he needs to meet with them again and realize that we are a listening government, we're acting, we have a plan, they have no plan,
Here,
Mr.
here.
Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Point Douglas.
6,000 people are waiting on a social housing list. Meanwhile, this government has sold off 1,800 units. Hundreds of units sit empty because this government has cut the maintenance budget by 87%. Meanwhile, we have how many people homeless? This former minister sold hundreds of units to the private sector. This government is following Brian Pallister's playbook. Why won't the minister reverse her government's cuts and ensure social housing is there for those that need it?
The Honourable Minister of Families.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'd like to remind the member opposite that it's our government that has built 745 new social and affordable housing units since we formed office at a tune of $110 million. That is in addition with having to deal with the $1 billion maintenance and repair budget that we had inherited from the NDP. They didn't spend their repair and maintenance budget fully every year, and therefore we had a $1 billion deficit of stock that was sliding into disrepair that we've had to come in and fix. We've got a long way to go in repairing all of our housing stock, but that is something that our government is committed to, and we will work towards that year over year while building new social and affordable housing units. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Time for questions is over. Petitions. The Honourable Member for Transcona.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background of this petition is as follows. The Bibliothèque Régionale Jolie Regional Library has been served notice by Red River Valley School Division to vacate the premises currently situated in the auditorium of École Heritage School by March 31, 2023. The auditorium was originally built in the 1960s by renowned Manitoba architect Etienne Gaboret and has been home to the JRL for 48 years. A photo of the auditorium captioned "The Regional Library" is published in a 2008 document titled Heritage Buildings in RM of de Salaberry and St. Pierre-Jolie. It is marked as an important modern building that could attain the status of heritage site. JRL and Red River Valley School Division have flourished from a mutually beneficial memorandum of understanding for 54 years. Their shared collection boasts over 50,000 books and has the fourth largest collection of French language literature in rural Manitoba. Students that are bused in from the neighboring municipalities that do not have a public library, such as Niverville, Grunthal, and Clearfield, are provided with free access to the public library in its fourth largest collection of French books in rural Manitoba during the school year. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to request the Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services to consider granting the auditorium to JRL by March 1, 2023. Number two, to request the Minister of Education to recognize the value that JRL provides to the student population of EHS, as well as the communities of St. Pierre-Jolie and the RM of de Salaberry. Three, to request the Minister of Education and Minister of Francophone Affairs to recognize that an MOU between the Red River Valley School Division and the JRL is mutually, financially, culturally beneficial. Number 4, to request the Minister of Sport, Culture, Heritage to recognize the heritage potential of this important building and its status in the community. And number 5, to request the Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage to prevent any renovations to the auditorium that would destroy and devalue the architectural integrity of the building. This petition is signed by Mona Pelican, Catherine Robertson, and Simone Lacasse, and many other Manitobans.
Are there any further petitions? The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, the background to this petition is as follows. 1. The Bibliothèque Régionale Jolie Regional Library, JRL, has been served notice by the Red River Valley School Division, RRVSD, to vacate the premises currently situated in the auditorium of École Heritage School, EHS, by March 31st, 2023. 2. The auditorium was originally built in the 1960s by renowned Manitoban architect Etienne Gabory, and it has been home to JRL for 48 years. 3. A photo of the auditorium captioned "The Regional Library" is published in a 2008 document titled Heritage Buildings in RM de Salaberry and St. Pierre Joly. It is marked as an important modern building that could attain the status of heritage site. 4. JRL and RRVSD have flourished from a mutually beneficial memorandum of understanding for 54 years. 5. Their shared collection boasts over 50,000 books and has the 4th largest collection of French language literature in rural Manitoba. 6. Students that are bussed in from neighboring municipalities that do not have a public library, such as Niverville, Grunthal, and Kleefeld, are provided with free access to public library and its 4th largest collection of French books in rural Manitoba during the school year. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. 1. To request the Minister of Labour, Consumer Protection and Government Services to consider granting the auditorium to the JRL by March 31st, 2023. 2. To request the Minister of Education recognize the value that JRL provides to the student population of EHS, as well as the communities of the village St. Pierre Joly and the RM de Salaberry. 3. To request the Minister of Education and the Minister of Francophone Affairs to recognize that an MOU between the RRVSD and JRL is mutually, financially, and culturally beneficial. 4. To request the Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage to recognize the heritage potential of this important building and its status in the community. 5. To request the Minister of Sport, Culture, and Heritage to prevent any renovations to the auditorium that would destroy and devalue the architectural integrity of the building. And this petition has been signed by many Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for the Pas-Camissac.
I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. Number 1, Provincial Road number 224 serves Peguis First Nation, Fisher River Cree Nation, and surrounding communities. The road is in need of substantial repairs. Number 2, the road has been in poor condition for years and has numerous potholes, uneven driving surfaces, and extremely narrow shoulders. Number 3, due to recent population growth in the area, there has been increased vehicle and pedestrian use of Provincial Road 224. Number 4, without repair, Provincial Road 224 will continue to pose a hazard to many Manitobans who use it on a regular basis. Number 5, concerned Manitobans are requesting that Provincial Road 224 be assessed and repaired urgently to improve safety for its users. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the Minister of Infrastructure to complete an assessment of Provincial Road 224 and implement the appropriate repairs using public funds as quickly as possible. This petition has been signed by many fine Manitobans. Thank you, sir.
The honourable member for Elmwood.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background of the petition is as follows. Number one, over 25,000 vehicles per day cross the Louise Bridge, which has served as a vital link for vehicular traffic between northeast Winnipeg and the downtown for the last 110 years. Number two, current structure will undoubtedly be declared unsafe in a few years. It's deteriorated extensively, becoming functionally obsolete, subject to more frequent unplanned repairs, and cannot be widened to accommodate the future traffic capacity. Number three, as far back as 2008, the City of Winnipeg has studied where the new replacement bridge should be situated. Number four, after including the bridge replacement in the city's 5-year capital budget forecast in 2009, the new bridge became a short-term construction priority in the city's transportation master plan of 2011. Number five, city capital and budget plans identified replacement of the Louise Bridge on a site just east of the bridge and expropriated homes there on the south side of Nairn Avenue in anticipation of a 2015 start. Number six, 2014, the new city administration did not make use of available federal infrastructure funds. Number seven, the new Louise Bridge Committee began its campaign to demand a new bridge, and its surveys confirmed residents wanted a new bridge beside the current bridge, with the old bridge kept open for local traffic. Number eight, the NDP provincial government signaled its firm commitment to partner with the city on replacing the Louise Bridge in its 2015 throne speech. Unfortunately, provincial infrastructure initiatives such as the new Louise Bridge came to a halt with the election of the Progressive Conservative government in 2016. Number nine, more recently, the city tethered the Louise Bridge replacement issue to its new transportation master plan and Eastern Corridor project. Its recommendations have now identified the location of the new Louise Bridge to be placed just to the west of the current bridge, not to the east as originally proposed. Number 10, the city expropriation process has begun. The $6.35 million street upgrade of Nairn Avenue from Watt Street to the 111-year-old bridge is complete. Number 11, the new Premier has a duty to direct the provincial government to provide financial assistance to the city so it can complete the long overdue vital link to northeast Winnipeg and Transcona. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows. Number one, to urge the new Premier to financially assist the City of Winnipeg on building this 3-lane bridge in each direction to maintain this vital link between northeast Winnipeg, Transcona, and the downtown. Number two, to urge the provincial government to recommend that the City of Winnipeg keep the old bridge fully open to traffic while the new bridge is under construction. Number three, to urge the provincial government to consider the feasibility of keeping it open for active transportation in the future. And this petition is signed by many Manitobans.
The honourable member for Notre Dame.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, the background of this petition is as follows. Number one, home care workers in Manitoba provide skilled and compassionate care that helps better the quality of life for thousands of Manitobans. Number two, robust home care services are proven to reduce the strain on health services and demand for hospital beds. Number three, home care reduces the demand for long-term care beds as it allows people to continue living in their own space. Number four, studies show that a third of the 200,000 Canadians living in long-term care homes could stay home with proper home care support. Number five, investing in home care saves money as daily services cost half the price of a long-term care bed and 1/7 the daily cost of a hospital bed. Number six, The provincial government's cuts to home care in Manitoba has resulted in chronic staffing issues that caused the WRHA to cancel 27,000 home care appointments in the month of April 2022 alone. Number 7, many clients in Manitoba only receive home care services once a day, whereas countries such as Denmark offer up to. Number 8, home care workers in Manitoba are paid poor wages, are offered little benefits, lack sick time, and are overworked, resulting in difficulty retaining and attracting workers. Number 9, home care workers have been without a contract since 2017 due to this provincial government's interference in labor negotiations. Number 10, investing in home care is a proactive approach that would save the province millions of dollars as well as allow more Manitobans to age in place. We petitioned the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the Minister of Health and the Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care to immediately increase investment in home care services so that home care workers can be paid a fair wage and clients can receive the level of service they require. This has been signed by Alex Hernandez, Tess Jalkson, and Maria Banyas, and many other Manitobans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. The honourable member for the Maples.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba. The background of this petition is as follows. Number 1, home care workers in Manitoba provide skilled and compassionate care that help better the quality of life for thousands of Manitobans. Number 2, robust home care services are proven to reduce the strain on health services and demand for hospital beds. Number 3, home care reduce the demand for long-term care beds as it allows people to continue living in their own space. Number 4, studies show that a third of the 200,000 Canadians living in long-term care homes could stay home with proper home care support. Number 5, investing in home care saves money as daily services cost half the price of long-term care bed and 1/7 the daily cost of hospital bed. Number 6, the provincial government's cuts to home care in Manitoba has resulted in chronic staffing issue that caused the WRHA to cancel 27,000 home care appointments in the month of April 2022 alone. Number 7, many clients in Manitoba only receive home care services once a day, where countries such as Denmark offer up to 6 visits a day. Number 8, home care workers in Manitoba are paid poor wages, are offered little benefit, lack sick time, and overworked, resulting in difficulty retaining and attracting workers. Number 9, home care workers have been without a contract since 2017 due to this provincial government's interference in labor negotiations. Number 10, investing in home care is a proactive approach that would save the province millions of dollars as well as allow more Manitobans to age in place. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the Minister of Health and the Minister of Senior and Long-Term Care to immediately increase investment in home care service so that home care workers can be paid a fair wage and client can receive the level of service they require. This has been signed by many Manitobans. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Are there any other petitions? Seeing none. Grievances? Orders of the day, government business. The acting government House Leader.
On House business, can we resolve in the Committee of Supply?
It has been announced by the...
Okay.
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I ask the House to resolve into the Committee of Supply at this time. I guess I had to sign it.
It's all good.
It has been announced by the acting government House Leader that the House resolved into the Committee of Supply. Committee rise, Mr. Deputy Speaker, please just take the chair.
Minister Panook, just checking if you're ready to go. If you can give us a thumbs up.
Make sure we can hear him too.
And make sure we can hear you.
Can't hear him yet.
Can't hear you yet.
You can't hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay.
Hang on 1 sec. You're starting up, Ian? Okay, 1 sec. You got your script there?
I do.
Okay, we're ready to roll.
Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now resume consideration of the estimates for the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. At this time, we invite ministerial and opposition staff to enter the chamber. We ask that members introduce the staff in attendance. Minister Panook.
Chair, today I have with me is my Deputy Minister, Sarah Teely. I got 3 Assistant Deputy Ministers here. One is Cynthia Ritchie, and we have Christine Sire and Blair McTavish as my staff from MPI. And then also I have my political staff with me is Andrew Clark and Kyle Reyners, who is my executive assistant.
Thanks for that. Is there any staff on opposition side coming? Not yet.
Oh, yes, he'll be joining me shortly.
Okay. Do you want to proceed with? Good. The floor is. Sorry, I will. I'll note that questioning for this department will proceed in a global manner, and the floor is now open for questions. Mr. Bushy.
No, it's not. It's not a standing committee. Sorry, committee of supply, so it has to be the constituency. Wait a minute.
The member for Kuwaitnuk. My apologies.
Still refer to me as Mr. if you like. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions I want to start off with the Outlet Channels project, and I'm just wondering if the minister can just to let the committee know what the project cost is as of today, or the project budget, I should say.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. When it comes to the channels, the Lake Manitoba Lake St. Martin Outlet Channel project, the amount that the total costs after once we've actually finalized sort of the design, it's going to be at $600 million is the total cost of the project.
The member for Kuwaitnuk, and I would also ask that you introduce your staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm joined by Chris Anderson, the knower of all, I believe was his title that we introduced him yesterday. The Vault of Knowledge, I believe, is what it was. So thank you for correcting me on that one. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for the $600 million price tag that was attached to the outlet project budget. And I'm just wondering, is that an increase from the initial budget?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the member for the question. When it comes to before this, the amount that I gave you was a $600 million project, $600 million project. The first part on a Class D design, it was first at $540 million, and the time when there was some changes to the that we had taken into consideration when it came to mitigation. Significant mitigation items that we actually worked with when it came to the federal government's requirements when we're doing the actual environmental licensing application. And see, these are some of the reasonings for the change in pricing. And there's basically the base cost estimate has not risen. There's some efficiencies that we've actually were able to determine when it came to the design. But the things that had to be changed on the project itself to create the $600 million increase was realigning the channels to avoid regional effects on groundwater, armoring both channels with minimized erosion, incorporating the base flow of channels to minimize effects on fish, and each operation incrementally increasing flows through the channel over multiple days to minimize sediment transfer and commit to no net loss of wetland benefits in accordance to the Water Rights Act. So this was all part of the consultation with First Nation community, along with the requirements from the federal licensing application that has come back to add these features that would bring the price up to the $600 million when it comes to, and then we also included the Indigenous Economic Development Fund too of $15 million was also part of that $60 million increase in the price of the $600 million total budget for the project.
The member for Kawatanook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the original price tag of $540 million, which is now, as was confirmed, $600 million. Can the minister provide the list and breakdown of that $60 million by all of the issues that he just and the items that he just raised? The breakdown as to what per item per cost that would be.
The Honourable Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, well, when it comes to the $60 million breakdown, the $15 million is the fund, is the Indigenous Economic Development Fund that we've set aside to the opportunity to develop economic opportunities in the communities most impacted by the Lake Manitoba Lake St. Martin's Outlet Channel project. And it also gives the opportunity for First Nation communities to apply for the grant money that would be able to help, and give them opportunities to get more competitive when it comes to actual opportunity to work on the channel, to bid on the channel, it's going to be tendered, and we want the opportunity to have some opportunity for First Nations to, when it comes to maybe some training opportunities from small amount of investments so that they can be competitive in the bidding process. But also, this also gives an opportunity for First Nation communities to, if they're in the fishing industry, much like some of the communities around the lakes that were impacted, they can also use that $50 million application grants for when it comes to the fishery industry. I know there's many, when we were visiting First Nation communities this past summer, there was many of them in the fisheries industry and our fishers, and this is an opportunity to be able for them to continue investing in that industry. So this gives them the opportunity from the impact of these lakes and the impact of the flooding, but also the impact of when we actually during the construction of the projects itself. The other $45 million is the amounts of all the different when it came to enhance the project itself, the changes to reduce the environmental impact of the design, and when the water actually is flowing, when years where we need to use the channel, we want to make sure that we were making sure that we went beyond the design D stage to make sure that whatever the federal government required to continue moving on to the application for the environmental assessment application. But also the other portion was to make sure that there was least amount of impact when it comes to the fishing industry, the environment itself, the sediment that gets is moving through the channel. We want to reduce it by parts of the design that would slow down the water flow to make sure it's more of a natural flow of water. It was almost like a river.
The member for Kuwatnuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I'm understanding correctly, then the $15 million was part of the fund that was announced a couple of weeks ago for Indigenous and First Nations work, as the minister just mentioned, and the other 45 was for the other contingencies that he also mentioned. I'm just wondering then, the 600 million price tag was announced, or the increase to 600 million was announced quite some time ago. And I'm just wondering why the announcement just over a couple of weeks ago about the $50 million, and why wasn't that announced in the beginning? Or is that more so an afterthought, or is that in addition to? So I guess the question really is the $50 million that's meant for, as you said, to allow First Nation and Indigenous communities to perhaps set themselves up to bid on work. So part of the design is also part of work. Are there Indigenous and First Nation communities that are going to be engaged as part of the design of the project prior to construction?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. And the member for the question that he had about the 45 million, the 50 million, the $50 million was, since I became minister back in January, that $50 million was actually allocated already at that point in time. It was just basically, we also needed to make sure that the approval process was kind of worked into the fund, like the $600 million. And again, that $600 million was presented to me soon after I became the minister back in January. And the $50 million was always there. For the last 6 years, we have been consulting with First Nation communities, our team, who, when it comes to the channels, have made numerous meetings with a lot of First Nation communities. The unfortunate thing about the, there was 2 years, of course, that with COVID, it was very hard for our team to get into First Nation communities. As everyone knows, there was a lot of restrictions when it came to COVID. And so the thing is, the First Nation weren't very comfortable having people come from the outside into their communities, especially when they were the most, like before the vaccination came out, they were probably the ones, the most vulnerable population when it came to the COVID virus. And so there was very sensitive, we had to do a lot of consultations too, on Zoom meetings too. And so this is what all came out of this, all these meetings over the 6 years, was to listen, to be part of the integrity of the project itself, to making sure that all these features that were addressed, that were concerns from the First Nation communities and from the RM, there's a few RMs in the area, when it came to groundwater, the aquifer, all those things had to be worked into the projects to satisfy the Government of Canada when it comes to the environmental review process. And again, these things all had to be incorporated in the actual final design of the project. And that's where we came up with the 600 million in this past, since I became minister. That number was there when I first became minister.
The member for Kiwatanuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So have the First Nations and the First Nations leadership then been involved in the design phase here for the channel project?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, the question from the member, Kiwatanuk, yes, when it came to the consultation process, we listened to First Nation communities, the concerns, the issues that they had, and definitely throughout the period of time, we incorporated those concerns into the project. Because at the same time, one of the biggest concerns that when we went to a lot of communities, that included like communities when it comes to the water coming in to Lake Manitoba, like Lake St. Martin, the water that's coming into Lake Winnipeg, these communities along these two lakes basically were concerned about the sediment that was going to be coming potential if we don't design it properly. And these were some of the components that were put into making sure that the flow of the water coming through the channel was basically going to come much like a natural water stream. And that's kind of how we designed the channels in that period of time by consulting with First Nation communities. And right now, when the and so the Indigenous input that was given to our department was realigning the channel to avoid regional effects on groundwater. And that was more probably with a lot of comes also with the municipality. Armoring both channels with minimizing erosion, and incorporating the base flow of channels to minimize effects on the fish, and for each operation incrementally increasing the flow through a channel over multiple days to minimize sediment transport. And so that's kind of was all put into, and then also commitment to not net loss of wetland benefits in accordance with the Water Rights Act. So what we're trying to do with the channel is not to lose any wetlands when we're making the design of this channel. The other thing is, right now, as when the NDP were in government in the day, they basically used the emergency channel. And that emergency channel was put through during the NDP days, and a lot of sediment was brought through during the 2011 flood and major impact to the lakes. And so this is where we as our government is working to make sure that we can move this project forward, and we're doing the consultation with First Nation communities, also answering all the questions that during the environmental process that we are answering a number of questions over the years to the federal government to make sure that this the process of getting this approval, the environmental license approved, so that we can actually then construct the channels. And the concern is that we are getting floods. The amount of water that we had this past year, if we would have continued getting rains in the month of June, like July and August, and going into September, we were unfortunate that the water levels in all the lakes are coming down. But the biggest concern now is that if we didn't have that and we went into a winter with a lot of moisture and a lot of snowfall, the concern that we'd have is that we would have to probably use those emergency channel again. And this is why we want to make sure we do it right. And when it comes to at the table, we have First Nation communities at the table to create the solutions so that every community is protected by this flood mitigation, and that we actually get this thing done right. And at the same time, we want to make sure that, you know, we also have other communities that are waiting for this approval so that we can start working on other regions that are looking for the same type of mitigation or protection when it comes to Peguis. So the thing is, we want to make sure that everybody's on board so that we can actually construct this channel, and so that we can move on to work on the next project, because there's other vulnerable communities out there that we need to protect, and we want to make sure that the federal government's at the table here to making sure that they're leading on this, especially when it comes to Peguis, because the fact is, the Peguis, you know, as you're aware, during the flood of this past summer, it's Indigenous Services Canada that's responsible for making sure that if there's any evacuations, if there's any, when it comes to flooding, they're the first ones on the scene. We as EMO, Emergency Measures Organization of our department, our division, are there to assist when it comes to...
The minister's time has expired. The honourable member for Kawatnuk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is the minister saying then, with the extensive consultation that he's had on the project, that the impacted First Nation communities in fact have given their consent to the design project so far, to the design of the project so far?
The Honorable Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I just want to, with the question that the member from Q8 had, was that I just want to say that the Manitoba government remains strongly committed to fulfilling our duty for Crown Indigenous consultation before environmental approvals to receive and before construction begins. Our investment to the Environmental Advisory Committee will ensure Indigenous communities, and this is meaning that communities, First Nation communities, will be at the table even after the construction, during the construction, and after the construction when it comes to the actual, any communities that live around the lakes have input in how the channel is operated. And this is that Environmental Advisory Committee. So from the time that the consultation was done, the time that the construction is being starting to be completed, to the time that actually when we're actually operating the channel, we do have the committee to be part of at the table to making sure that they're actually being listened to, they're actually having input, and they're also part of the solution when it comes to the ongoing of the operation of the outlet channel project. And we are consulting with 39 First Nation communities in Manitoba right now. And the fact is it's including not just for Lake Manitoba, it's communities around Lake Manitoba, it's communities around Lake St. Martin's and along the Lake Winnipeg, and that includes Peguis when it comes to Fisher River First Nation, and all Pitang, and all the communities going down the Nelson River too, because this is the impact that everything that is from Lake Winnipeg flowing to Hudson Bay are part of this 39 communities.
The member for Kiwatanuk.
So I still didn't hear an answer there about whether or not the affected First Nation communities, and well, I guess we put the number of 39 more so than the geographically closer ones to the channel project, have those communities then signed off on the design that's been proposed to be able to do the channel project? Have they already given their consent to the minister?
The Honorable Minister.
Chair, I just want to answer the question to the member is that we are not asking for consent. We are working right now on a continuous consultation with First Nation communities. And we're actually on a stage two of a 4-stage consultation to address every community issues to making sure that they are being addressed, their concerns the questions are being answered. And this is also the consultation, the information, the answers, the questions, all go into the federal government when it comes to the environmental licensing of the project. So this is what's all the part of the process for making sure that this project gets approved by the federal government, but also at the same time that communities ongoing during the consultation where our department's going many times to different communities to making sure that every concern, and there might be some communities that might have some more questions, We will continue addressing those questions and concerns, and it's part of the process of a 4-stage. And right now we're on the second stage, completing the second stage of a four-stage process.
The member for Kawatanook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm hearing then that the consultation process is more so just a kind of almost for show then. It doesn't really matter what the feedback may be because it's still going ahead regardless of what the feedback from flood-affected First Nations may be in terms of consultation versus consent and support of the project. It sounds to me like their concerns are in fact not going to be taken seriously because the project is still moving forward in the minister's words by that any means. I do have a question about the $3.1 million that was announced for the Environment Committee. Can the minister tell us who exactly makes up that committee?
The Honourable Minister.
I just wanted to address the comment that the member from Keewatin had to say, you know, our department has been working with First Nation communities and consulting. I've actually been to many of the communities, and we actually had Petition. We actually had 7 different communities right there to listen to concerns about the addressing their concerns. And a lot of that stuff has come back. You know, the concerns that they had during the 2011 flood, again, that was during the NDP days. And they had a lot of complaints that how they were treated back in 2011. And the fact is, it was their own government. And the member from Concordia was there and part of that government too, to say that, you know, that a lot of the concerns and complaints were coming from those floods. And this time we are out there, we're listening to all the concerns that they had, the issues that they had during the 2011 and 2014 floods. And the thing is, we want to be there to be part of the solution. And our department is consulting with First Nation communities. This is part of the reconciliation that we're going to be working with First Nations. I have some really good relationships with a lot of First Nation communities now in Manitoba. I've always had. In the Western region, I had some really good relationship building. I've had a lot of relationship building with Chief Hudson, with the Chief of Fisher River, with the Chief of Lake Manitoba. And they even said they feel that now they're finally being listened to. And they felt good that we were actually consulting with them. But they didn't feel good like that in the past, and that was the NDP government at the time. So if you're going to put blame that we're not consulting, well, the thing is, what they were complaining about, the member from Keewatin, is your former government that they were most concerned about. And we met with, President Chartrand, and we were able to, talk to him about the opportunities, working together to making sure that Métis population in the region, especially when it came to St. Laurent, is a concern. The consultation is with them. The Interlake Reserve Tribal Council, we had meetings right there. We now dealt with RM Grahamdale, the first Fisher River First Nation, Peguis First Nation, Lake Manitoba, Lake Saskatchewan, Little Saskatchewan, and Pitut-Lutang. We've talked to all of them, and basically, they basically said, we finally feel like we're being heard. They feel that they're finally at the table, and they're feeling that they're part of the solution. And we're reassuring them, when we move forward, that they will be part of the consultation when it comes to how the channel is operated. But you know what? They never had that in the past with this NDP government during the flood. They did a lot of complaining about how they were treated during the 2011 flood. So I would just say that we will continue consultation, and it's an ongoing process. And the thing is, we all have to be on the same page, be part of the solution, and working with the federal government, because we've all got to be in this together.
Mr. Wiebe, the honourable member for Concordia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I take it from the minister's non-answer that he is taking this issue under advisement and will get back to the member from Kiwetinoong with regards to the makeup of the Environment Committee, which he asked in his question. In a similar vein, the residents around Moosehorn in that area, the RM of Grahamdale, folks are very concerned in that area about the process that was undertaken for expropriation and the environmental impact of the Channels project on themselves and the place that they live. In the same vein as the Indigenous communities that are impacted by this Channels project, the people who live there, many are multi-generational families who have been farming on that land and are producers who understand the dynamics of the land, who understand the environmental balance that has been that exists in that area, and have identified serious issues that they foresee coming with the placement of the channel and the way that it's being undertaken. They, from the very beginning, have asked to have a seat at the table, to be heard. They've asked for very reasonable ability to give input about the location of the channel, the impact to the water table, and the impact to their lives. And they've also asked for a fair deal when it comes to the expropriation that's being asked of them. And they are willing to do their part as Manitobans to ensure that we have a comprehensive flood mitigation system that can handle years like we saw this year, years like we saw in 2011, and years that we imagine we'll be seeing more of in the years to come. So they're willing to do their part. And they came out to community meeting after community meeting, and they report a feeling of being pushed around or bullied by this minister's department. And I don't think it's the minister's intention to come across that way. But when people aren't listened to, when they aren't respected, that's the feeling that they come to. So my question is there are a few properties that are still yet to be settled with regards to the expropriation. Some landowners are still asking to be moved and to be compensated for those moves because of the location of the channel. I'm just wondering if the minister can detail the consultations that he's undertaken with those individuals, whether he's sat down personally with them and listened to their concerns, whether he's aware of them, and maybe he could shed some light on next steps for those who are feeling that their voices aren't being heard in this process, want to do the right thing, want to do their part to ensure that this project moves forward, but want to be ultimately heard. So if the minister can comment on that, that would be appreciated.
The Honourable Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And this is for the question that the Honourable member for Kuwait, the question was the Advisory Council. And what was reading off was the Manitoba Métis Federation, the Interlake Reserve Tribal Council, RM of Grahamdale, Fisher River First Nation, Peguis First Nation, Lake Manitoba, Little Saskatchewan, Pinmubatang, Lake St. Martin First Nation, Canada IAC organization, the Dauphin River First Nation, the Dauphin River Community, and Kinostchegon First Nation. So these are there'll be representatives from all these communities to be part of the advisory council going forward during the construction and also ongoing when it comes to the operation of the channel. Yeah, and so I will have a break here just to get some information about the question that the honorable member for Concordia has asked.
Sorry, Minister, were you asking for a break there?
Just get my answer for the member for Concordia.
Is he his consultant?
I'm not sure we follow, so we'll roll along. The honourable member for Concordia with a question, or is
Well, I
Mr.
can, yeah, thank
Minister
you.
does have his hand up if we.
Thank you very much,
don't mind.
Mr. Chair. I appreciate, again, I understand how the process works. I want to give the minister an opportunity to get the information he needs from his officials. Maybe as a quick follow-up or an addendum to that question, simply to ask whether the minister would be willing to personally sit down with folks, affected landowners around Moosehorn that would I think probably appreciate that attention, that one-on-one attention, and a conversation, phone conversation meeting would probably be appreciated. So maybe I'll just put that on the record.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm not quite sure where the member is getting his information from, but you know, when it comes to consultation, the Grahamdale municipality, regular monthly meetings are with our MTI staff on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. And there's a dedicated MTI staff member who actually lives in the Grahamdale area. They could reach out to any time, who's this, you know, basically the person to go to if there is concerns and issues in the area. And our staff have been working collaboratively on road realignments and road improvements with the RM, and we've done everything. And the thing was, since I became a minister, there was never been a request from any of these people to even come and talk to me about this. And the only thing that I've been requested by was to meet with First Nation communities, because everything else, if you're hearing of one person or anything, please let them contact our office. I'd be happy to sit down with individuals who have any concerns, because that's what I do. I've been sitting down with anybody any RN who has requested my presence to talk and discuss. I've never declined an RM since I became minister. I have never declined talking to individuals who want to talk to me. So I'm not quite sure where you're getting this information from. But our staff are out there, and they are basically ongoing conversations with everyone out there. And if a person's coming to you, it's probably more of a political, probably one of your allies who are just causing issues. But if they want to talk to me, I'd be happy to sit down as a Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure to listen to their concerns, so that we can make sure at the end of the day, we're all benefiting from this flood mitigation. And yourselves, I don't understand from you guys are talking about getting this project done really quickly and having it done because scared that the flood is going to happen. That's our concern. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we move this forward and that this project happens. And we're doing everything possible to move this ahead, because it is Manitoba's livelihoods that are at stake here. And we want to protect everybody. Our EMO department had done great jobs out there this past summer and spring, because we actually were inundated by every direction. This is why we want this project to move forward here with no delays, with consultation with First Nations, and making sure the federal government, I've been with meetings with Phil Clare, talking to him regularly, and he understands that sometimes it's his other department, which would be under Minister Patty Hajdu, and then the Environment Minister, to make sure that this project gets done. He understands the impact that British Columbia had during the flood. He understands the dilemma that we were facing, because that's his department. But when you have three other departments that are making decisions on this, it's very concerning. It's delaying things, and they all have to get on the same page to make sure this project gets passed, so that we can move forward to protect other communities that are very vulnerable right now, like Peguis.
I do just want to remind the Honourable Minister to direct his comments through the chair. I appreciate it's easy to forget to do that. So just a friendly reminder, the Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do just have to put on the record that is an absolutely shameful response by this minister to suggest that the people that are living in this area are politically motivated, that this is some kind of stunt, and to suggest that he hasn't heard of this. He sits right next to the member who represents that area, the member for the Interlake, who I know his office has been contacted multiple times. I know the minister's office has been contacted multiple times. We went out to Graham or to Moosehorn to sit down with residents who were affected, myself and the leader of the opposition, and to suggest, we are bringing this information forward in good faith, as His Majesty's loyal opposition, to give the information to the minister. He started off by saying he'll meet with anybody. That's a good start, but to suggest that this is politically motivated is an insult to those people who are who face years of uncertainty and disruption to their lives, who, as I said, have made it very clear they're willing to see this project through, because they understand the impact that flooding has on our province. So they understand it. But he sits next to the Minister for Agriculture. He can talk to him about the impact that it's having on those constituents there, and I'm sure he'll get an earful from them as well. So I appreciate the fact that he's made that. I will extend that invitation to those folks who've reached out to us, to the Minister, and make sure that that meeting does happen. Finally, I do have a number of what I'm hoping are short, quick questions that we can get to about projects around the province. But I did just want to close the conversation around the Channels project by asking about the timeline that the minister, any light that he could shed on the timelines that he has indicated publicly. I understand from public comments, pardon me, that there's a 2-year extension with regards to the environmental assessment. I wanted to know if the minister can give us an overall project timeline, when construction will actually begin and when it's expected to be finished.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I should have known better to talk to the chair. Mr. Chair, for the member's questioning about the timeline, the environmental licensing we're actually in round 2 of the information request by the federal government. So we have no control of the timeline of when these questions are asked again of round 2. There's extensive amount of questions and answers that they want for the environmental process. And when I've talked to 3 different ministers, I am telling them how important this to get the approval on this project, because once the approval is done and we get the go-ahead on the environmental license on the federal side, then we can actually start constructing of the channel. And the channel is going to take 3 to 4 years of construction. So this is why it's important that we can move on this. And again, I have no control of the federal government when it comes to the process.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Okay, so I take it from the minister's answer that essentially they're throwing up their hands. And, he did his apology tour with the Minister of Indigenous Affairs, went around with the Premier and said, oops, we messed up, and now has no timeline for this project to be complete, and doesn't seem that concerned about moving this forward more quickly through the environmental process, let alone the consultation process, and then on to actually getting it built. As I said, I want to move on to a few other issues that the minister, I'm sure, won't be surprised that I will raise. One being with regards to noise that's generated on the perimeter highway, from the perimeter highway. We've been contacted by both folks on the south end of the city and on the north end of the city who are concerned about noise. They have department information and independent information with regards to noise levels that indicate that these are excessive, particularly on the south perimeter where a new project is being undertaken with regards to the overpass at St. Mary's. Residents there are suggesting there may be an opportunity to enhance noise mitigation. It is done on other projects, other provincial projects. I would imagine this would be one that, would be on the minister's radar. I'm just wondering if he could shed any light into any work that he's done to investigate these concerns that residents have with future projects or existing projects, and maybe offer some solutions to those folks who are looking for some kind of noise mitigation as our city grows closer and closer to our major trade route, which is the perimeter highway. What options do those folks have to mitigate the noise that's coming off of the roadways?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, just again with the thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, when it comes to the noise when the perimeter highway, first, we have to. I just wanted to let the member for Concordia know, Mr. Chair, that when it comes to as he said, the city continues to grow out towards the perimeter highway, and there's more development that's happening. It's really up to the developer for any future, developments in and around the perimeter highway to actually be part of when it comes to the development, is to be responsible for noise barriers. If that's part of their project, that's their responsibility. But when it comes to existing properties that were built prior to any development, were built, like say in the St. Mary's, when you look at the St. Mary interchange or the Highway 59 by East St. Paul, East St. Paul, Birds Hill area. Again, we actually follow the 1984 guidelines for the city of Winnipeg, and that's how we estimate. That's what we determine the noise levels, and that is by the Winnipeg guidelines. We do actually have an independent study that gets done by an independent firm to do these certain studies. And when it comes to, for example, the Highway 59, it's been done 3 times, and it actually was below the guidelines of what the city of Winnipeg's requirements are. And at the same time, we're doing a 4th one, just because maybe the last one was done during COVID. Maybe the volume of traffic was a little bit lighter back then. I noticing now that our transportation areas are now getting to a point where we're back to pre.
Minister, your video feed has gone out, and it is required that you have that video feed on. Could you just check your settings and make sure that you could turn on your camera, please? Thank you, Minister. Please go ahead, the Honourable Minister.
Yeah, sorry, it was my battery that was going dead, so I had to plug my computer in. So what it does is it's closing me off for as a video. So sorry about that. I apologize for that. But yeah, so anyways, when it comes to the 4th study that we're going to do in the East St. Paul Birds Hill, to make sure that if it happens to be that the traffic volumes the noise is higher than the guidelines, that's something we would have to take responsibility at some point to work with the residents in that region. And so, but at the same time, going forward in any new development, again, that's going to be responsibility, like any city in North America. It's the developer who comes up to the interstates, to our freeway systems. They're responsible to making sure that part of their development is the cost of noise barriers.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Yeah, and again, I think the minister is well aware, not only because I continue to read petitions about this every day with regards to the south perimeter, but as he correctly identified, the north perimeter and the Highway 59 101 interchange. I guess the concern is that once the highway was elevated, that changed the dynamic as to where the noise was transmitted. I know that as part of the South Perimeter study that was done with regards to the upcoming interchange, there was a noise study that was done. I would ask the minister to review that and suggest that, when these projects are being design build, this can be part of the project. We did this, during Chief Peguis Trail, the first phase, understanding it goes through a community, that there needed to be noise mitigation. Other major cities, when you have a highway or a freeway that impacts a community, we need to make sure that we're dealing with the noise there. And actually, I mean, I'm sure the minister is well aware there are some solutions that don't involve putting up a wall, that might be acceptable or might help with the issue as well, that residents might be open to. Just staying on the same theme, the minister may not come up to the North Perimeter too often, but he and that's not a slight on the minister, but he's certainly welcome to come up Highway 59 or come along Highway 101 and through that interchange. And I know I've been approached by some truck drivers and others who are using the North Perimeter that the interchange, I think this is part of the usual shifting and settling of a new project like that, but there are significant speed bump problems, right? Huge dips in the highway that have now been marked, but are still a significant problem. And I've actually seen and heard of some trucks moving through there at, going 100, maybe 109, and they're hitting those, and some are reporting that they're almost losing control because they've gotten so bad. Again, this was a project that, started by the NDP and completed by this government, but, was done in a way that there is some, I think, responsibility of the design builder to make sure that this project is safe. So I'm wondering if the minister can report back to the legislature what steps he's taking to deal with that issue and other places, I guess, on the perimeter where there are these kind of bumps and dips and issues where our roadways aren't safe. We want to treat it like a true corridor up to interstate standards, as the minister always says. These need to be dealt with. Can the minister talk about some of the steps he's taking?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, well, when it comes to the Perimeter Highway, the member from Concordia had a smart aleck remark saying that I'm not on the North Perimeter. I wonder if he's ever on the North Perimeter. When he talks about the Perimeter Highway volume of traffic, when it comes to the interchange, like the access points of Sturgeon Road and some of the interchanges some of the points that we had on the Perimeter Highway, I'm on that Perimeter Highway more than he probably is. Because the fact is that the North Perimeter, I've been to many communities, Beausejour, a number of times. I had a wedding. My brother lives down in Beausejour. I remember driving on Saturday afternoon and seeing that, you know what, to tell you the truth, Mr. Chair, the member for Concordia should realize that our Perimeter Highway is probably busier than Highway 29, where I went down this past weekend with the amount of traffic that our Perimeter Highway has. The Saturday that I was there, I couldn't believe the traffic that was on that Perimeter Highway. So if the member says that I'm never on the Perimeter Highway, he has another thing coming. When's the last time? I think he only hears about Highway 6, but he never hears about the other highways that his government did not do anything about. And now that we have years and years of deferred maintenance that we have to rebuild these roads because they underspent in many parts of infrastructure. And when it comes to the interchange of not Highway 59, the interchange that was done, started with his government and finished with our government, it's part of the warranty that the contractor We still have a warranty with that contractor. Just like, you know what, it's basically the Red River Valley. The member has to realize that with the Winnipeg Gumbo, when it comes to the Red River Valley, there is a lot of shifting. There's a lot of settling. And also, when they built the airport, they should realize how much settlement that was, that the airport took a couple more years more to build under their watch, to making sure that, you know, that it is the challenge of the Winnipeg Red River Gumbo. That does happen, that it's natural that it settles. There has to be, and that's why warranty is so important when it comes to major projects like that. And I'm reassured by my staff that it is under warranty and they're aware of all the issues and concerns, and they will be addressed by the contractor. And like I said, you know, I take offense by saying that the member, especially when he lives in the city of Winnipeg, doesn't even know how much traffic there is on the Perimeter Highway, and he's concerned about an interchange, like access point in Brandon for the safety. And meanwhile, he's fighting for us, my engineers, who say that the Winnipeg Perimeter Highway, the engineers are saying that these access points have to be closed. And I'm taking their advice. I see it for myself. I've almost been in an accident where the member always says that he doesn't want the access points. He's listening to some of the people in that area. But Winnipeg drivers do not want another traffic light like the NDP had put on the Perimeter Highway. Instead of doing interchanges and underspending their budget, they overspend in every other department. So for infrastructure, they could have had a lot of these interchanges done, and we could have been more of a freeway. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Well, I apparently inadvertently touched a nerve there. I'm sure the minister drives the Perimeter Highway on a regular basis, and so he's aware of this problem, and I'm glad that he's indicating that's going to be done. I'd like to know just a little bit more information about the timeline with regards to getting that work done, and it is good to hear that the builder, who I think we do have a good track record with, and is one of, again, you know, this is an NDP project. The minister wants to talk about we built that interchange, you know, like the current chair of this committee and member for Radisson were happy to jump in a convertible and drive that opening day of the interchange, you know, while my constituents were waiting when it was their turn. But anyway, but you know, he was happy to do that. But it was, of course, an NDP project, right? And it was one of the ones that I was proud of to push forward to make sure that we did it right. We did it once and we did it right. But now we want to make sure that it's up to snuff. And I'm glad to hear the minister has driven it, knows it, and knows that it is an issue. I do want to talk very briefly about the access points to the Perimeter Highway. And the minister knows that we've talked about safety, we've talked about upgrades to Highway 101 and how important it was to ensure that we are, you know, we're in lockstep with the government on this, that we want to see it as a trade route, and we want to address the concerns that are brought forward by those who use it for work and for business and for moving goods across the country and for the residents. But the concern that we have is that the minister seems to have chosen winners and losers. And, you know, we just reviewed a map, the highly detailed map that was provided to us from the residents that live down Sturgeon Road and in that area that, you know, say, look, you can go around the perimeter right now and we can show you every single access point that remains open while ours are closed. You know, I visited the Dashmesh School on the North Perimeter very recently. You know, students, a growing school, a great school, providing education to the Punjabi community and beyond. And they were very proud of the work that they're doing, but they said, look, we lost our access point. Our school bus now has to drive, you know, a few miles down a gravel road just to drop our students off. And in the mornings, it's a busy place. There's cars, there's buses, there's all of it. There's businesses that have approached us that have said, why are we being punished when other businesses, you know, were prioritized to keep their access points? You know, we suggested that the minister, instead of looking at just closing these access points, should look at what are the solutions to upgrade and enhance access points for those businesses and for those communities and those people that live off of the perimeter highway, and not least of which are the people who have been impacted by the lack of emergency vehicle access, including people who've waited for hours and hours and hours because they aren't able to get the same kind of service, and emergency vehicles don't know how to access them. So the minister knows all of that, and I think he understands that. And again, I'm not trying to be confrontational. The minister has heard my concerns about this. He's heard the people's concerns about this. What I'm trying to find out is if the minister is, in the same way that he now touts that he's upgrading the interchange at St. Mary's and other projects that are on the horizon, we applaud those projects. But what is he doing to make sure that access for these businesses, for these schools, for these residents, is upgraded and enhanced to ensure that we have a safe perimeter highway, but we have access for everybody on the perimeter. And and I should mention the the impact on our producers who just this last harvest season have been out on the highway, out on the perimeter highway, driving their machines, their big machines. There's no way the minister can think that that's safe. So I leave that with the minister, but I just want to ask if he has any input as to what upgrades are next for some of these access points, and will he at the very least consider reopening some of the more critical access points with those upgrades that we've been asking for.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank the member for that question, but this gives me an opportunity to talk about the process when it comes to looking at the perimeter highway, making it more of a freeway status of a highway, how busy it's becoming. But we have to first look, and the reason a lot of this is being done now is you have to look at the young man who lost his life on the South Perimeter Highway by the Brady landfill. And he's a young man, Ethan Boyer, who his parents have now lost a loved one who's never going to be coming home now. And all the more reasons when you talk about a school bus, we don't want a school bus to be in that same situation as a young man who had lost his life because of the unsafety and the access points that come out on the perimeter highway. And the thing is, what came out of that whole strategy was that we actually looked at a safety review, and that was done on the South Perimeter in 2018. And then it went into a study, a functional design study that was actually completed on the South Perimeter. And that is why, because of this young tragedy of this young man individual, that is why we've actually closed them even on the north side. because, again, I just want to say that I was almost in an accident on Sturgeon Road. And I just couldn't believe, like in a freeway system like this, which is busier than some interstates in I-29. And the thing was, a person who decided at the last minute to turn down Sturgeon Road decided to slam his brakes on and turn a bit, and we all had to slam our brakes. And I'm surprised that none of us got rear-ended. I'm surprised the guy did not get rear-ended and pushed into the oncoming traffic. And I just thought, this is so ridiculous that this is still open. And a couple weeks later, my colleague, my predecessor, closed that access point down. And meanwhile, it was your critic role that questioned why that access point was shut down. And I applauded the decision of the former, my predecessor, the non-member for Springfield Richard, that actually did that. And I'm, to this day, is making sure that we are going to look at solutions from now on. And the solutions would be, is once the North Perimeter study is done, it's going to take a couple years to get that study done. And the thing is, we're going to have solutions of whatever every North American major center has, is that they have to connect the interchanges or the lights right now, currently the lights that we want to remove off the Perimeter Highway in the future, we're gonna have service roads. And Sturgeon Road is 4 miles, there's 4 miles between Highway 6 and Highway 7. And the thing is, any other American city, it's quite common to have interchanges 4 miles apart. And we're going to be doing service roads, for example, there or anywhere else, is to make sure that the solution is to make sure that people can get onto major arteries to get back on the Perimeter Highway. And that's kind of what we are going to be focusing on. And then already the South Perimeter study has shown that these are the interchanges that we have to work on and continue the process to make the Perimeter Highway the 1 million Winnipeg Perimeter Highway Freeway Initiative.
The honourable member for Concordia.
The minister indicated earlier that he is, as he said, willing to meet with anyone, and you know, in the same way that solutions.
Floor.
Sorry, we were distracted by hijinks on Zoom. In the same way that you know, people on the ground being affected by the Channels project are simply willing to come to the table and share their expertise. I think the folks, specifically with regards to Sturgeon Road and other access points along the north and west perimeter, have indicated that they shared their information with during the consultation process, but I think they'd really appreciate a meeting with the minister. Sticking with the theme of highway safety, the minister may have seen an article in the Carillon with regards to Highway 12, and that's at the intersection of 210 and 12, where we've seen a number of significant incidents and accidents. It's a growing area, busier and busier area. I know that the ministers recently made an announcement with regards to upgrades north of Highway 1 on Highway 12. And I think those will be appreciated by the community out there. I also know that north of Steinbach, there have been a number of upgrades. Blumenort, I think they recently got a set of lights to mitigate the safety there. Just simply asking if the minister's aware of this issue, whether he's looked into this, and whether he can shed any light into the recommendations coming from his department with regards to lights or some kind of controlled intersection at the corner or at the intersection of Highway 12 and Highway 210.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, just before we get into the that situation on Highway 12, and I just wanted to let the member know that when it comes to the North Perimeter functional design, the study that's going to be done on the North Perimeter, the people in the area, that's why we're going to have engaged Manitoba so that we can have input. And when these studies are done, from everybody that lives on the North Perimeter has the opportunities to engage, and so that when this functional design study gets done, that we have everybody's input. And that's the process when it comes to anything, and that's kind of leading me into when it comes to Highway 12. We know it's an unsafe intersection. There has been statistics of accidents there. We've actually addressed some of those concerns. We've actually put flashing lights on the overhead, on the stop signs, rumble strips, speed reduction on 210, leading towards the Highway 12. The thing is, we just don't want to put a light on that intersection, because the fact is there's an interchange there. And the interchange, to come over the interchange and then down to a traffic light would make no sense. But at the same time, we are actually looking at a service road safety review. And then we're also doing a functional design study. And my colleague, the honorable member for Dawson Trails, has addressed this past, actually, one of the first months that I became minister. And he actually took me on a tour of all the issues in his area. And that was one of the main intersections that he was very concerned about. And so the department really understands the situation. And we might have to redirect the intersection to make it closer to work within the actual asset that we have already, is that interchange that goes into St. Anne's. We will probably continue working together to direct the traffic so that we can utilize the structure that we already have designed. And I was just there during the announcement, and there's possibilities of rerouting the traffic there. And that's what our department will come up with a final design to making sure that people in the area are safe. This is our number one priority, is keeping Manitoba safe. And we'll continue investing in all our infrastructure throughout the province.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
I understand the minister saying he's aware of the problem. I do think that this requires immediate action. I know that, despite what he's saying about the member for Dawson Trail, we haven't seen him be proactive here in the House with regards to this issue. And this is a major issue for his constituents, people of St. Anne's, the kids who are riding the bus out there. So I hope that the minister takes this very seriously. Again, very quick question, hopefully a quick answer. In the same area, I think I spoke with the minister about this personally, but the bridge on Highway 210 coming into the town of St. Anne's, there have been significant accidents, collisions that have happened there. And I think the minister is aware that's identified, I think, in his department as a real trouble spot or an area that needs some attention. Wondering if the minister can shed any light into maybe steps that can be taken, reduction in speed. He knows that the highway comes in, there's a significant turn or bend in the road, and then a very narrow bridge. Anyway, if the minister can shed any light into that trouble spot as well.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Like again, when it came to going back to the comment after I answered the question, our department is taking immediate action on that intersection of Highway 210 and number 12. Like I said, we're putting flashing stoplights ahead so that people are aware that there's a stop sign. We're putting rumble strips and speed reduction on Highway 210. And so, but we are also looking at a major change, looking at a study, and we're also going to look at a possible functional design. But at the time where we're doing that functional design in the safety review, when we do the actual stage of functional designs, we also have engaging the public in that area to exactly what they would like to see too. So this is kind of a process to when we do any kind of functional designs, making sure that everybody in the community, people using the highway going to Steinbach, have opportunities to address their concerns and what they would like to see that could actually help the safety of that area. Again, when it comes to the interchange that we've spent millions of dollars on, we want to make sure that we let the traffic flow properly. But again, we're going to have to maybe possibly reroute the intersection of 210 closer to the interchange. And the bridge on 210, MIT met with them this week, and we're reviewing the speed reduction on that bridge that goes into the town of St. Anne's.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
I do genuinely appreciate the minister looking into that and moving on that issue. Maybe I don't have a specific question. We brought up many times in this house the issues with Highway 6 for obvious reasons, not least of which that, of course, we lost a member of this chamber due to conditions on that highway, but because there's a coalition, a broad, political cross-party line coalition of residents from Thompson and from surrounding communities who come to us with concerns with Highway 6. I know the minister has, indicated or understands, I think, the issues at hand, more passing lanes, more rest stops. These are just a few of the ideas that have been brought forward by those community members. Likewise, we're hearing from members on the ground. We talked about vacancy rate yesterday across the department. We're hearing from members of the department who are out there clearing our highways in the winter, and they're saying all bets are off this year with regards to service times. They're just saying they're so far understaffed. The number of trucks they have on the road is so far under what they need that there's a real concern that if we have another bad year, or even if we don't, that folks are really going to be on their own when it comes to travel on the highways and the safety they can expect after a snowstorm. So I don't have a specific question. I guess maybe if I was to sum it all up, maybe the minister can comment on steps he's taking. Again, Highway 6 is a concern, but we know this is just one of many places that without attention, we're going to see more accidents happen. The minister talks about safety. What are we doing with Highway 6 and other access points to the north?
The Honourable Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The member from Concordia was talking about Highway 6, and then I had the opportunity. I know, the tragic loss of your colleague, our colleague in the chamber, Danielle Adams, was a big loss, and I know it was devastating for the family. And our condolences again goes out to her family, everyone that was affected, that touched the lives of so many people and so many other constituents. And again, I know the importance. I have to honestly say, I've never been to Thompson before. It was one of the few towns that I have not been to in Manitoba until June. And I wanted to see for myself, to see what the highway was really, the condition of the highway. And one of the things I've been up to Flin Flon, and I've been up to the Paw when I first became MLA. The embarrassing part was that the furthest north, I've been around the world, the furthest north I've been before I became an MLA was Swan River, because when I was a family member, the only day trip that we can do was probably Swan River Rodeo, and we were dairy farmers, so we couldn't get very far in a day. So the thing is, I'm falling in love with the North. It's been a great opportunity. I've been to Churchill back in 2015, and I see the potential in the Northern Manitoba and the importance of our people that live in Thompson, everywhere, all Manitobans, how important Highway 6 is. And one thing I was surprised about was how straight the highway was. I was expecting it to be very curvy, much like Highway Flin Flon is. But there was a lot of straightaways. And right now, one of the worst stretches of the highway just south of Thompson. But it was the stretch that we were actually, while I was there, they were starting to chew up the old pavement. And we were going to be doing about, I believe it was like 21-kilometer stretch of probably the worst stretch of highway. And then we were investing the amount of money of, I think it was like $10 million this year. But for the next 3 years, when we have a 3-year budget, we're going to be spending $51 million on Highway 6. And that includes for every portion of the highway that we're going to be redoing, we're rebuilding it to, again, RTAC standards, which is 5 levels of pavement, but we're also adding more and more shoulders to the highway. So we're going to continue as we build on Highway 6, but we're also considering, through my direction, is looking at, we always do a study of the traffic flow volume to making sure that it warrants to do passing lanes. And I really believe that the portion that really needed to be looked at was as you were getting closer to Thompson, the roads became, the terrain was a little bit rugged with rock. There was more curves in the highway and more traffic as we got closer to Thompson. And because a lot of traffic comes from the lakes that go towards Thompson. So the idea here is probably to look at designs in my direction through the department to look at some passing lanes. We've actually seen, as we're doing Highway 3, which again, there's a lot of volume of traffic coming from Morton Winkler through Carmen, and we've done passing lanes in Highway 3. And this past year, we did a number of passing lanes on Highway 3 between Carmen and Brunkill, and we'll continue doing passing lanes, especially with volumes of traffic that comes from places like even Brandon, north of Brandon on Highway 10. We've done passing lanes. We've also done number of passing lanes on Highway 16. So this is where we're going to look at Highway 6 now to do more passing lanes so that people who are behind slower traffic have the opportunity to pass so that they can continue going to the speed, safe speed towards the city of Winnipeg from Thompson. So, and I just did an announcement in Thompson, Bridge, I guess it's called, that we're going to be looking at a gateway to the mining industries up north of Thompson. So we are going to be investing a lot of money in the north when it comes to Highway 6, the safety, and at the same time, when it comes to the recruitment, we know the challenges of making sure that our maintenance when it comes to, and now it's called the Mile and Heart Bridge. I was corrected here. I guess we've changed the name. And we're actually doing a major project there. I think it was like 50 million.
The Honourable Minister's time has expired. Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, where does the time go, Mr. Chair? Looks like we're nearing the end of the day, and yesterday we got cut off, so I did want to make sure that we gave the minister a chance to finish his thoughts from yesterday with regards to his meeting that he had with VBJ Developments. He mentioned that there was a difference between the meeting that he had with Wew'suwet'en and the meeting that he had with VBJ. He also indicated that he had met with one of his colleagues, and I think he wanted the opportunity, from judging just by the body language in the House, he wanted the opportunity to answer the question during question period, but was protected by his member from or the Minister of Finance. So I'm going to give him the opportunity to explain the difference between those meetings and just indicate when the meeting was, who was present at the meeting, and whether any staff were at that meeting.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to put the record on the correct record on the record here, that when it came to the bridge that I did announce, that it was $36 million bridge on the north side of Thompson, and it was. I just want to make the correction that the bridge now is called the Miles Hart Bridge. So that was the bridge that we're doing $36 million to revitalize the bridge, to rebuild it, and then so that we have full loaded when it comes to the transportation corridor that goes north to Lynn Lake, the importance. And I never had the opportunity also not to answer finish answering the question when it came to the maintenance of the operations that we have in the north. And the concern, the very big concern right now is making sure that the recruitment, we are so focusing on recruiting. Again, our always goal was to make sure that we have capacity. We have allocation of 1,825 positions that are allocated to the department. And again, it fluctuates based on the season, because we do have basically seasonal employees in the summer, and then we have additional, different seasonal workers in the winter, especially for snow clearing situations. And right now we have recruited 957 positions from April of 2019 to August 31st, 2022. So there's 957 positions. And plus, we've also been training 40 new equipment operators for snow clearing. So that's the importance of kind of the winter that we had last winter. We want to make sure that we're recruiting and making sure the concerns that the member had was concerned about the group, the Highway 6 group that came to my office, that I met with them twice, once here in my office here at the Ledge, and once I met with the Chamber of Commerce when I did my northern tour in June of the city of Thompson, when I did that announcement on the bridge. And so we are recruiting on a regular basis to make sure that we have the substantial amount of snow clearing operators for the future, for this coming winter. We know that there's some predictions that we could be facing even a more of a colder, snowier winter, but I can't imagine anything worse than we had last year. And who knows, because we could get back to back, and hopefully they're totally wrong and we have one of the mildest winters. Our department would like to focus on building highways instead of fixing up flood situations. And yeah, going back to the opportunity that I was, because of yesterday's closing of the day, when it comes to the Wayway project, the situation there, it's an existing business that's on a highway that it's really concerning of the volume of traffic that is going into that business. There's some days that the business has sales of gasoline, which really had attracted a lot of people during this past summer into their business, which was good. I'm sure they're selling a lot of, they're, as much as they're probably losing a little bit of money on gas, probably getting it on the that's where a lot of gas stations actually make money, is on the convenience and all the services that they provide in their convenience store. So there was a concern on that highway that when people were trying to get north to the lakes, Clear Lake, to riding mountains, a lot of people from Brandon go that route. A lot of volume of traffic that lives along Highway 10 and are connected to bedroom communities like Minnedosa and Forest and many Erickson, and a lot of people from the Westland and Parkland come to Brandon to shop. So the concern was the safety of Highway 10, the access point, and the thing was what we were wanting to do, the department would like to have done, and that was the condition with the RM when the business was put there, was to have a service road that really mirrored the service road like we're doing in the Perimeter Highway, because it's a highway from the Trans-Canada Highway that has a lot of volume of traffic, was to do something on each side of the road and having an intersection where it would be the airport.
The Honourable Minister's time has expired. The Honourable Member for Concordia.
When did the Minister meet with VBJ Developments, and who was present at that meeting?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, just to finish off the two different projects. So I sort of concluded what was the situation with Wayway, but Wayway wanted to want more direct access, and we're listening to the RM, the City of Brandon. What do they really want? And this is what our department is working with the City of Brandon. What the plan is, and we're going to be working with Wayway. We're going to be working with the municipalities. We're going to have a joint meeting to making sure that if we want to do a design where they want turning lanes and stuff like that, functional design, we got to design it. We got to make sure that it's safety in mind, so that it's much like Main Street. We want that to happen north of the Trans-Canada Highway in Brandon, just like we have north of the Perimeter Highway on Main Street, with more boulevards and turning lights. That is kind of what we're up against, is how does the City of Brandon want to grow? And that's where we had a lot of discussions. And so in the meetings I had with the City of Brandon, we had some joint meetings with some of my colleagues, and the thing is, the opportunity here was to focus on what does Brandon want to see as a city. And as the member of Concordia is aware, my office meets with many stakeholders, such as rural municipalities, city councils, town councils, developers, First Nation groups, the industry associations, special interest groups, and individual citizens. In fact, since being appointed the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, my office has met with more than 75 occasions with groups such as these, and not to mention that hundreds of phone calls, emails, and virtual meetings that were made and attended to ensure that we were meeting groups and individuals during the pandemic.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Concordia on a point of order.
I've given the minister ample leeway to consult with his officials. He knows the answer to this question because he was there. So he knows when the meeting happened and who was present. He doesn't need to read a prepared statement, and he doesn't need to consult with his officials. I think he owes it to this committee, to the House, to the people of Brandon and the people of Manitoba to simply ask the question. Otherwise, I think people have good reason to be suspicious of what this minister has been up to. So I ask again, will the minister simply answer the question, when did the meeting happen and who was present?
I rule that it is not a point of order, it is a dispute over the facts. Points of order should not be used to extend debate. The Honourable Minister does have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we do is we consult with many stakeholders and groups, and we have meetings all the time. And in this case here, when it comes to the development of the future of the City of Brandon, we've actually had many meetings and with many of my colleagues, the City of Brandon, and understanding that the need. And when it comes to municipal relations, to economic development, we've met with many of these individuals in the City of Brandon. And we'll continue meeting with all my colleagues. And because you know what, we're not going to be silos like we saw with the NDP government. They were silos, Mr. Deputy Chair. They didn't work together. They were disconnected. They couldn't even get along to the NDP. They fought all the time. And my colleagues, we actually want to have focus on the government as a whole, and making sure that there's no silos, that we work together as opportunities to make sure that, like our Premier wants, economic development, and we're going to work together.
The hour being 5 p.m. Committee rise, call on the Speaker.
You can just leave that there, okay? Until Tuesday, October 25th, 10 a.m. Okay.
The hour being 5 p.m., this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, October 25th.